Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Rick West. He's the CEO and co-founder at Field Agent. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Man, it is great to be here, Kevin. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show again. You've been on kind of the radio show a couple of times. You've been on the TV show a couple of times. And why I really wanted to have you back is to I'm curious really to see kind of how you've taken the couple products we've covered, months ago, kind of see where they are now. And then I really want to focus on kind of, you've obviously been super successful. You've been through kind of the whole startup gamma from kind of coming up with an idea to building it, to launching it, to getting clients, becoming profitable. Now you have like a real business that's making money. And I kind of want to cover like that whole journey with you kind of maybe
Sure.
After we cover kind of this intro piece. But I do think for people that don't know who you are or what Field Agent or Jitco is, I think we should maybe kind of give them a little bit of an overview of yourself, and then let's give an overview of the two companies, and then we'll get into some conversation. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. I'm ready to go.
Perfect, man. So let's maybe start off with kind of a bit of your background and kind of where you grew up, where you went to school, and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so if your listeners are out there, if they are avid readers, they probably have heard of this book that's out and about now. It's called Hillbilly Elegy.
Okay.
A guy by the name of J.D. Vance wrote this book about his background and culture. And the premise behind the book was how culture follows you around. It's really difficult to leave that culture. And he talked about the Rust Belt in Ohio, which is where he grew up, but his family also grew up in Kentucky, and they were coal miners. And I'm one of those guys. I mean, my family came from the coal mining country in eastern Kentucky and Appalachia.
Sure.
I went from there to the University of Kentucky, went to the big university, and then from that, you kind of progress along to Procter & Gamble. And listen, I lived all over the world. I've lived throughout the States and Hong Kong and Thailand. But all that to be said, when you think of my background and my culture, that hardworking, blue-collar kind of guy is still there, which I think, quite honestly, kind of helped me be the entrepreneur that I am today because I'm not afraid of hard work.
Sure. I think, like, just to dwell on that point for a second, I don't even know how to describe it, but like the only way I can think about it is probably the most, if not one of the most difficult things on the entire planet you can do. Correct? Do you agree?
Yes,
with that?
it is. It is.
And nobody talks about how much of a roller coaster ride it really is, right? Like you can have highs and lows multiple times in like an afternoon, never mind in a week or a month or a year. It's astronomically more difficult than I think anybody realizes. And the only people that truly get it are the ones that are either going through it or have been through it. Fair?
True. And there's something about, too, being somewhat flexible, but at the same time, I don't want to say that you shouldn't be an expert, but sometimes for people that are really, really good at this thing, it makes it more difficult for them to be able to have the breadth that's necessary to be the financial guy in the room, the operations guy in the room, the marketing guy in the room, the social media guy in the room, the motivator, the HR person. I mean, you have to be able to kind of ebb and flow with that. And
Sure.
For some folks that are absolutely brilliant, that's just not what they're cut out to be. I mean, they want to be the expert on X. And when they walk in the room and walk out, you're like, wow. But they're not the one that you're going to say, hey, go start this with a white sheet of paper, go start this up and go run with it. So different people have different backgrounds that make them uniquely designed to be successful in something. That doesn't mean that you couldn't be anything you don't want to be, but you're going to have a bend, right? And so my background and culture gives me that bend. When I went to P&G, they definitely took me through multiple assignments and kept me fresh and really helped you understand different parts of the business. And so I think I was somewhat uniquely designed to go do this. But that being said, listen, you can be 25 or 55 and really have the bug and can make this entrepreneurial thing work. You just have to be able to do hard work, and you got to be able to ebb and flow.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice, right? But I'm kind of curious for people that haven't heard of kind of Field Agent, what exactly is Field Agent and kind of what do you guys do?
Sure. Now, for your listeners, I need them to think back to the pre-selfie era. I mean, that's a long time ago, Kevin. I mean, it's ages ago, right? This is 2009.
Wow.
I mean, for some folks, they're like, well, that's really a long time ago, but it's not that long ago, right? But so in that era, the smartphone had been out for about 18 months.
Sure.
The iPhone 3S was just on its way out. We got that new phone. We are so excited because you actually had video. And again, still free selfie, no front-facing camera.
That's right.
But the phone had much better photo capability. You didn't have to worry about jailbreaking your phone as much. All that technology is happening. And we were a shopper marketing, shopper research firm trying to use technology to capture information inside of people's homes and inside of stores.
Sure.
And what was happening at that time, Kevin, we were flying all over the place to capture data. We realized, gosh, maybe if someone was holding this little thing in their hand called a smartphone, not a BlackBerry, but smartphone,
Sure.
maybe that could capture data for us. And so we took the concept of crowdsourcing, which is people everywhere all the time, this thing called technology, married the two together, and in April 2010, launched an app that allowed you to capture data while you're shopping. And so if you fast forward 7 years today, we've got over 1 million downloads. We do tens of thousands of transactions every single week of everyday people capturing information while they shop. It could be a price of a certain item. It could be a competitive set, what's on display, or tell me what new item you found on the shelf. It could be how you use a product or a service. It could be you test driving a car, all the way up to, hey, would you go to this restaurant and kind of check out this food and tell me what you think? So that whole premise behind of, mystery shopping or sending contractors out, we disrupted that by bringing crowdsourcing and technology together. So for your listeners that are out there today, even if they're a startup, they can literally log on to fieldagent.net today, put together a job, and within 15, 20 minutes, have data back from really anywhere in the United States and 6 other countries that can help them launch a product.
Sure. No, that's amazing. And I think if people want kind of more information about a Field Agent, and we dive a lot deeper in the kind of past episodes with you, and I can link those in the show notes as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. But kind of just back to the question for a second, what I love about what you did kind of with Field Agent is you've been clearly keeping current with this stuff, and you've been kind of updating, your product to reflect some of the new stuff. And I think the best example, as you touched on, is kind of like adding video once you didn't have to jailbreak your iPhone to get to record video. But you also took kind of the core of Field Agent and built kind of a spin-off product called Jitco. And what I love about that is you basically created a new vertical. Yeah, it took some more work, but you weren't starting kind of from scratch to build kind of a second complementary product. So do you maybe want to kind of walk the listener through that journey and then kind of what Jitco does today?
Sure, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's amazing what you can learn if you actually listen to your customers. How about that?
I think that's great.
Crazy.
That's the best advice, right? It's weird, right?
Yeah, so as we're entering into year 6 and year 7, as we're going through the work that was in front of us, more and more of our clients, our customers, are asking us, "Gosh, I really don't need to get into 1,000 stores. I really don't need to have this project. I just need a quick answer."
Sure.
And then what we realize is, gosh, with the scale that we have, why don't we simply create a search bar similar to what you would find at Google or Bing? Sure. And you can type into the search bar, what does the dairy section look at the new store? It looked like at the new store in Lidl. Tell me what the price of milk is in Aldi. Show me how you store this inside of your home. And by typing that in, we literally take it real time, push that information out, and within about 15 minutes,
wow,
you can have information back. And it's similar to a search bar. And what that search bar does is pull that information back. Now, 5 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago, you could Google something and you might find information from 6 months ago or 2 years ago. But we're talking live data within 15 minutes. Type it in, ask virtually any question you want, and you're going to get that. As a matter of fact, if your guys are listening now, by the time this podcast is over, they can have data back. So here's my challenge to them. They should go to gojicco.com. That's GOJICCO.com. They should log in for a free question. And while they're listening right now, ask a question about something at retail or about something in someone's home. And for free, they'll get information back in about 15, 20 minutes. It'll blow their mind.
Wow. That's really cool though, right? Because nothing, well, and I'm the second most impatient person I know. So I think like having that kind of real time feedback, you could almost do it at the beginning of a meeting. And I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you brought that up kind of when we last recorded, was kind of, you know, if you kind of want to impress at a meeting a little bit, it's like you could either do it right before a meeting, you know, a half hour, an hour before a meeting, or maybe even during a meeting. You say, oh, somebody's got a question, just like, let's go to Jicco, you know, and check it out. And then by the end of the meeting, you could have an answer, because I have my opinions, you have your opinions, and neither one is good or bad. It doesn't really matter. But if we want to know like what the Walmart down the street or wherever is doing, if you can get that back in, you know, during the time of a meeting, that's pretty cool, right? Like,
yeah, you can actually doing that. Yeah, you can actually look like the smartest person in the room. So let's say that one of your listeners is new in their career, and they're developing a new product, and they want to get that product out into a Best Buy. It's a technology product. They're trying to get it out, and they're walking into a meeting, and they know what's going to come up. They're going to say, well, what does competition look like? You know, how is it priced? And you know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And they literally, you know, an hour or so before the meeting, they can go out into market. And so when they walk into that meeting and say, listen, I just went out and looked at 10, 15 different Best Buys.
Sure.
And then I have these 15 photos of exactly where our product would go. And this is what competition looks like. So here's my recommendation. Kevin, you can look really, really smart in that meeting.
No, I think that's great. But I'm kind of curious to know, whether on the field agent or the Jicco side, it's been a few months since you've been on the show. Is there kind of, how have either one of those products kind of evolved over that time? Like, have you guys kind of taken a bunch of feedback from your users and kind of evolved them? Have they kind of stayed the same, or kind of walk me and the listener through kind of the evolution over the last few months?
Sure. Let's use that. Let's stay with Jicco for a while. So, you know, the buzz now, people are talking about, gosh, you know, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. Yeah. So the latest addition or really change for Jicco, we launched it last week, is the beginning part of artificial intelligence. So now when you type in, hey, I would like to see this, or show me a photo of this, we've got enough data coming in now that we can kind of fill in that response for you, just like you would be typing something into Google and it kind of fills it out for you. Well, we're in that process now of you typing it. By the time you finish typing, we've already got the response back to you saying, is this what you're looking for? You're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, but I didn't know how to say it. So artificial intelligence is really right there in front of us. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to do this tomorrow, but it's becoming easier and easier now with some of the tools that Amazon Echo and others are providing. And so we're not that far away from saying, you know, hey, Echo, would you tell me or send me what the photo for this, or would you tell me what the price of this is? I think we're pretty close to make that voice recognition kick in as well. So we're moving along those lines.
Wow. No, that's kind of fascinating to me, actually, because, like, yeah, it seems like more and more we're just going to end up talking at something at some point, and almost like the cell phone, how we know it now, is kind of going to disappear. Like, I don't know how that's going to be, but it seems kind of a bit almost outdated now to carry kind of a huge phone in your pocket. You're just going to end up talking at something probably in the next 3, 5, maybe 10 years. And whether it's like a watch you wear with a little screen, or I don't know, like I know Google Glass I don't know. Did you ever try Google Glass, just out of curiosity? Total
Yeah,
tangent, but
yeah. No, we did try that out. We kind of played around with it for a while, and here's what we were running into. Is think about just the practical side of that. Battery drain, couple other things,
sure.
and listen, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, they'd already outlawed the thing in bars because it was too weird. The facial recognition was so good that people felt too creepy because when I would look up and see your face, Kevin,
Yeah,
instantly
sure.
I had your social media profile pop up and it was almost too invasive. And so we said, let's let that play out.
Sure.
Uh, we worked pretty hard on the watch aspect of things, but that didn't play out as well. So technology requires us to stay on top of it, but every now and then you'll have one that makes sense to go work. But Google Glasses just simply didn't pan out.
Sure. No, and the thing is that I was going to say about that is like, I don't even really care about what it did because I thought it was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
Where I think it really fell down is like, I was too embarrassed to wear it outside of my house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I don't even care what it did or how cool it was. I just couldn't physically have the guts to go outside my house with it on. Never mind if it was doing all this cool stuff, right?
Right.
So like I get why they outlawed it, but I think the thing that's interesting about it is at least Google tried something. It might
Right.
have
Yeah,
failed
absolutely.
miserably and crashed and burned or whatever, but at least they tried something. So I think like I wear a smartwatch every day and I love it. I love the convenience of it. But I don't think we're kind of there yet. And I don't know where the transition's going to be, but I love the fact that you guys are kind of up on the forefront of that stuff, right? Because you've built the technology and the artificial kind of intelligence. The hard part's kind of done. Where you guys actually put that, whether it's a voice activated thing or it's an interface activated thing or a combination of the two or something that neither one of us has ever even thought of right now, you have the core technology, right? And if somebody says, oh, I have this thing, and you're like, oh, we need to port it to that or move it to that, it's not really that difficult because you have kind of like the core engine in place. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right. You literally you are building upon the success that you have as opposed to trying something new all the time. Different iterations of what we have today really make sense. And so that's really what's driving us today. We are focused on driving and improving that core that we have today, and we're simply looking for other verticals or avenues to launch it in.
Sure. So I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on kind of a bunch of things related to just running a company, a startup, kind of a business, being kind of a startup. I think a lot of people, well, no, let me back up for a second. I think the thing that drives me crazy is a lot of when you read about how a startup or a company or business is run is so based on how it runs in Silicon Valley. And like, that's great for Silicon Valley, but I know for a fact, because I've had enough people on the show that have been in Silicon Valley, are still in Silicon Valley, or have been in Silicon Valley and left Silicon Valley, that even sometimes in Silicon Valley, the stuff you read about Silicon Valley doesn't even exist in Silicon Valley. So how could that even exist outside of Silicon Valley? But I think the thing that I'm trying to get at is like, you're obviously not in Silicon Valley, and I think that's great. And I love the fact that you're not in Silicon Valley. So I think you can give kind of real advice and thoughts and opinions, good and bad, about what it's really like to run a company that went from nothing to a profitable business that's doing well, that's building other products based on something. And so I guess my first question to you is, what do you think makes you go from being kind of a startup to a real business? Do you ever kind of lose that title? Does it matter? Does it?
Yeah,
Who cares?
well, in some cases, I have some people on the team that when they say, "Oh yeah, field agent is a startup," it offends them. They're like, "Oh man,
Sure.
we're not a startup. We're doing this." And so we use the term we're a tech enabled company. We're a tech
Okay.
company. Still sounds
Okay.
cool, but it's not the startup. And so I'm going to give you the best advice that I've ever been given.
Love
And
it.
And this started week number 2, that we're kind of bouncing this idea around. What do you think? I had a consulting guy that does executive coaching, and he's seen a lot of startups. And he's pulled, me and my business partners aside and said, listen, I'm going to give you this advice, and it's the only thing you remember from our meeting today. Write this down. And so you're thinking, okay, well, this is going to be really, really philosophical. He said, you are only as good as you invoice.
Okay, interesting.
And so you're
Sure.
like, well, that's. And he said, no, I want you to think about this. He said, now, I think if you watch Shark Tank, I think what do they say?
Yeah.
They call you're a entrepreneur, or
Yeah.
you're just a very expensive hobby. Well, that's what he was saying. And so I think you go from a startup to a real business when you are actually sending people invoices and they're paying you money.
Sure.
Because other than that, Kevin, it's just something fun. I mean, you get some private equity money, you go spend that, you get your friends' money. It's really cool and it's fun. You're not making any money. Well, man, you keep giving stuff away. That's fun. And that's kind of what startups figure out. But eventually, when you say, hey, I'll charge you $1,000 or $50,000, or you'll sign a $500,000 contract, when you start having those conversations, you're not a startup, man. You're a real business.
Sure.
And so you're really only as good as you invoice, which is advice I give to every startup I talk to. When can you start invoicing? And when you do, you'll know if someone's going to pay you or not. If that's the case, you got something.
No, sure. And like the thing that I've always kind of found like fascinating to me is how some people's business model is, well, I'm just going to sell to like Facebook, Twitter, or Google, or Amazon, or I don't know. Like there's probably a few others that I just missed, but like that's not a business model, right? Like if you and I set up a brick and mortar store, it doesn't even matter, like a coffee shop. If we were just like, we're just going to give away free coffee until like Facebook comes around or Starbucks decides to buy us, people are going to be like, that doesn't really work. But like, I never understood how that didn't translate online.
Well, and I think people are starting to figure that out. So it's kind of fun. I mean, you talk to someone that says, oh, listen, I've got a really great delivery service. I'm going to deliver groceries to college, students, and this is what I'm going to do. I said, dude, there's like 50 companies doing that. Yeah, but ours is better. Well, have you tried it yet? No. Has anyone paid you for it yet? No. Have you talked to anyone? No, but man, my mom and my brother think it's really cool. My girlfriend thinks it's awesome.
Sure.
And you have to get past it and talk to real people. They're going to pay you money. So oftentimes, if you're a Guy Kawasaki fan, you think back the work he did. He talks through that all the time, saying, "Listen, you're never going to know what people think about your product till you get it in their hands, and you're going to learn more at that point in time. So get your MVP out.
Yeah.
Again, use your investment money and use your startup skills to get it out. Once you get it out, find out if someone's going to pay you for it. And if they do, drive it. If they're not willing to pay you for it, then you're still a startup. Go figure it out and keep, doing different versions of that. And eventually someone says, I'll buy 10 of those widgets, or I'll sign up for a year of that. When you find that out, and you're no longer a startup, you're a real business.
Sure. No, I think that's actually really good advice. And I always joke with people that for me, because I kind of come as the kind of creative designer kind of type, and you build this prototype or you roll out this new feature, and you're like, you could be thinking you're like the greatest person, designer ever. And then you upload that to like usertesting.com or some other like online testing kind of platform. And man, it's like if you need an ego check, you just upload your stuff to like a site like that, because you will learn so fast how you're just like, how can you not see the big orange button or whatever color it is, right? And like that person just like can't figure it out. And you're like, this is the simplest thing I've ever done. And you're like, wow, So I think like it's such a humbling experience sometimes, and it's such a crazy kind of journey. But I think like you're right. Like you're not really a real business until somebody's willing to kind of pay for it, right? And I think
exactly
we forget about that, and like so many startups fail because I don't think they really come in it with a business model in mind, right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing along those lines. You think about advice to people, especially those that are really deliberators, those that are just sitting in a room, but they keep doing version after version. Yeah, there's something to be said for just making it happen. I mean, just launch it. I mean, the
Sure.
last thing you want to be is that guy in the room that says, I had that idea years ago, but I had it before you did, and I thought it was a really good idea, but I just didn't get around to it. So, it was really my idea first. I'm like, whatever. Listen, you
Sure.
have to make it happen. And so sometimes you just have to push go. And so that's the second thing I would tell people is that, yeah, I think I've got a good idea. Man, just go do it. I mean, how much damage can you cause? Virtually none. Are you going
Sure.
to be embarrassed? No. How hard is it going to be? Sure, it's going to be hard, but just go out there and get the product out, get the service out, see what people think, and then get it out of your head as a stupid idea or as an amazing idea. So you've got to just make it happen.
No, I think that's really good advice. But one thing that I've always thought that's kind of worked really well for me, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, is if you roll out something very early on that's maybe rough, maybe even a little buggy, if you put it in kind of a few, maybe favorite customers isn't necessarily the right term, but kind of a few select customers that you know and trust that like your product. And if you say, I'm testing out this feature, it's not even beta yet, it's maybe pretty alpha. I think it's a good idea, but the team doesn't, or vice versa, or some people, it doesn't really matter. You put it out to them and you say, like, give me your honest thoughts. Like, you're not going to offend me, don't really care. Just tell me what you think. And when you have they'll give you their feedback, good, bad, or other. It doesn't really matter. But the point I'm trying to get is, like, if you have these people that are using your product, that are paying for it, and if you give them almost the ability to help build the future of the product by even giving them kind of a buggy version of something, and they get to give feedback, it's almost like you're building more loyalty because they feel like they're actually a part of building the product. Have you found that in kind of your experience in kind of this game?
I really have, Kevin. And so if you look at Jikko for us, when we were getting ready to launch it, we went out to about 10,
Okay.
really good clients, ones that we trusted, and more importantly, ones that were really engaged with our product and said, okay, to your point, a little bit buggy. If it doesn't reload, don't worry about it. But we need your perspective. Now, here's what's interesting with that. All of us have that inner entrepreneurial thing where you want to launch something.
Sure.
A lot of us just simply don't have the opportunity. So those 10 people I'm talking about were in companies that they simply, were never going to be able to do something like Jikko. So it actually allowed them to feel like they were part of a startup for 2 or 3 weeks. It was
Sure.
fun. We sent them things at night. They were engaging. They did print screens. They wrote stuff up. And you genuinely appreciated the feedback they were giving, and they knew what they were getting into. So not only is it going to help you from a product standpoint, but I really think it helps build loyalty to you from a company perspective because they really appreciate you taking their advice. And it's kind of cool to be a part of because not everyone can jump out and quit their job tomorrow and go do this.
Sure. Well, and some people don't want to too, right?
Yeah.
But they want that kind of few minutes or few weeks of kind of feeling like they're a part of a startup, right? And I think that's kind of great.
No, you're exactly right. And so part of that is that, the term I use is that, anyone can be, successful. The question is, can you be significant?
Interesting.
And you're kind of touching on the significant part is that, yeah, I could go make something that looks really cool. Well, okay, fine, but no one's going to use it. The significance part is when you can actually impact someone's life. Now, part of impacting their life can be their work. It's like, man, I'm impacting their work and I've given them a better product, and Field Agent did that. Amazing product, went out there, disrupted industry. The significance parts on the personal side is just what we're talking about. Now I go to 10 people and I've been able to impact them significantly as it relates to them being able to do something they never thought they'd be able to do. It's very uplifting. It's motivating. And so it wasn't creating the successful thing called Jikko when I talked to those 10. It was really being a part of those guys, career development, to be a part of what they were doing, and really to be able to engage them away, to be that significant person in their life. To be honest with you, is hard to do unless you've got a product like this, because not everyone lets you kind of get into their inner circle like that. And so it was a really cool experience that we had. It wasn't the success thing, it was the significance thing. And that's a really cool thing to do.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. So I'm kind of curious though, and you've been doing this kind of since the early days of Field Agent, but like, how do you guys kind of decide what you're gonna tackle next? Because there's so many kind of like new technologies coming out, and like I know AI is kind of the latest thing, or like everybody and their dog now seems to have some sort of like home device that you talk at that gives you the weather in your day and will order you groceries and etc. But like, how do you guys kind of decide whether to jump on that bandwagon, or kind of, maybe wait and see, like, or is it a bit of trial and error, or how do you guys kind of keep up with technology?
Yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error, but for us, it gets back to what you stated earlier, is that you've got a machine. You want to continue to grow that machine. And a mistake that I think entrepreneurs or startups make all the time is they chase the shiny object. And I'm telling you, Kevin, a shiny object can get you in trouble. Now, we
Sure.
would use the term, you're chasing rabbits, you chase the squirrel. You can make the ADD joke about, oh gosh, he's chasing a squirrel, It could come into that. But it's very true because you have limited resources. Your
Sure.
clients are expecting certain things from you. And so making what you have better, taking what you have, taking it into a new vertical, or putting technology on top of what you have is instrumentally better than chasing after a new technology because you think it's cool, and then you try to sell the same client something new. They're like, wait a minute, I thought you were in data collection. I thought you were a data stream. Oh, yeah, I am, but here's this really, really cool thing. Wouldn't you like to do this too? They're like, well, I don't understand what you're doing, right? So there
Sure.
is something about chasing technology for technology's sake, I think, can get you in trouble. Focusing on technology and new within the vertical you're in makes total sense. Now, if you're in a large company you've been running and you've got a couple hundred employees and you're the Salesforce.com guy and you want to create something new, man, knock yourself out. I think it's great.
Sure.
But for most companies, you're going to find that your clients appreciate you bringing technology to them within the core of what you're doing. And I think they really appreciate it, and it really builds upon your business. And that's kind of the very first thing that we look at. Does it make our product better, or does it improve the lives of our customers today? If so, let's take technology and let's make it happen.
No, I think that's really good advice. So this kind of leads me into kind of my next question. And I've done this at the previous startup that I've worked at, and it didn't go well, let's put it that way. And I don't want to mention any kind of names, but we had a very well-known kind of guy out of Silicon Valley. It's been super successful in a handful of spaces. And he literally told us, like, if we added these three features that he would, potentially invest and kind of work it into his products and whatnot. And like, we chased that so hard for, I don't know, weeks, a couple of times over a different period of time. And in the end, like, it obviously never came. But so I'm kind of curious to know how do you guys kind of handle those kind of feature requests? Because it's hard for kind of a new startup when somebody says, I will sign up 100 people or whatever, or my entire sales force or whatever, if you just build these like two features. And sometimes to startups that can just be make or break, right? And then if it
Yeah.
never actually comes, it's soul crushing for lack of a better term. But how do you handle kind of those kind of crazy requests, whether they're crazy or not crazy?
Yeah, there's a balance in there. And so for us, if I go back to our early days, to your point, you would do just about anything to get any client to say yes to something, right? And
Sure.
that you just chase it, blindly to go do that. So there are some bets. There's some puts and calls that you have to make. I tell you, as you transition a little bit, the way we do this today is that we've always got a list of products or projects or enhancements of things that our clients are looking for. And we're at the stage today that we use terms like co-invest. It's, listen, we're absolutely going to go down this path. I'm not asking you to invest any money in our product because that makes no sense at all. But that being said, I need a purchase order for this. I need to be able to see the money in front of me. I don't need you to write me a check, but I need some skin in the game. And there have been some
Interesting.
clients that are like, well, yeah, I don't know. And listen, Kevin, they're never going to do it.
Sure. If they're
They've
not
never
going to do it
right?
then, right?
Right.
Like, what do they
Right.
care?
Because you got to think it's skin of the game for them. Again, talk to a larger company to ask them for 10, 20, 50, $100,000 up front is really, really hard. To tell
Sure.
them that you like to have a purchase order with intent to go do this, that's totally within their scale of what they can do, within their
Sure.
approval level. They can make that happen, and that's skin again. Now they still could cancel that, but that's a really good, good faith step forward. And so we've used that model, if you will,
That's
to make that
interesting.
happen. The other
Okay.
thing is we've done some joint things, which is, hey, yeah, I'm going to go do this. And so we get in front of a client with them, their client, and their client says, oh, I love this too. And so it kind of puts them on the hot burners as well. You better do it now because you just told your client you're going to do it.
Oh,
That's,
interesting.
that's another approach that you can take. But it's all about getting some form of skin in the game. And you're going to know from your client's perspective what they can and can't do. But it's not always money. It's some
Okay.
form of commitment that you can get. Now, again, it still could fall through, but at least you've done your due diligence. You've got commitment up front. And I think that's a very fair business transaction to have with your client, is to have them put some skin in the game.
No, I think that's really good advice. And actually, I never really thought about kind of the purchase order side of things, right? Like, it's not, no money's been exchanged. They haven't really paid for the development of that feature, but or getting them in front of the client and getting their client to commit. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the thing too that people need to think about is you almost need to be like super creative with this stuff, right?
yeah,
Because it's like I don't know, like I think the illusion that a lot of people I've kind of had that have kind of come and asked me questions about this stuff is like everybody has their insecurities no matter how successful they are or aren't, and everybody kind of decides, well, that a decision, right? And it might pay off, it might not pay off, it might not even really matter, but like at the end of the day you kind of need to make these kind of judgment calls and be creative about kind of different ways to come up with this thing, right? And you might try it once and you might build the feature and then you don't get the client, and then the next time you're like, okay, well, I want like a purchase order that when we roll this out that we're going to get that $10,000 or whatever, I don't know, whatever the number is, right? So
yeah.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, and what you'll find as your listeners are thinking through this, like, gosh, with this client, I think they'd be willing to commit to this. And if they did that, then I'm willing to put my resources into it. And listen, you find out a lot about people and you find out a lot about clients when either they, renegotiate on that or they make changes on it, and maybe they're not the right client for you anyway. But at least
Sure.
it's a fair way to have the conversation. And I think that no client would be upset in me having that conversation.
Sure. So how have you dealt with in the past like a difficult client or kind of a client that isn't necessarily or thinks that what they bought isn't exactly what you guys provide? Because I think that's got to be an issue that any startup struggled with, right?
Right, right. For us, we have a mantra with our account managers: don't live in the gray. I said there
Okay.
is nothing worse than a maybe. I think I can probably. Sure, let me check on that. Listen, don't live in the gray. And so
Okay.
then your account manager says, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, if you talk to a client and the client's asking for this, or in conversation they get something confused, that the first thing we always do, and again, it doesn't have to be a long dissertation, but we recap everything back in writing to our client. You have to.
Okay.
You
Sure.
cannot live in the gray. So, well, I thought it was going to be orange and red and be a 12. I said, well, I understand that. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, but, I remember that meeting recap that I put back together, and I told you it was really going to be green and blue and 10. It was
Sure.
really green and blue and 10. And so that gray thing kind of gets you in trouble. Now, sometimes it simply doesn't meet expectations. And there are times with that where you have to eat some things and you know what? We didn't deliver. And I'll still say, don't live in the gray. Did we deliver? No, but I really think, I said, no think. Did we deliver? No, we didn't. We'll go
Gotcha.
back and eat the project, or say, listen, we'll give you a credit for something else, because I honestly believe, Kevin, that we get more business by being yes and no, black and white, than living
Sure.
in the gray. And
No, I
clients appreciate you saying, I screwed up, never going to happen again. Here's how I've made it right. that's great, but maybes and probablys are really, really bad things, especially for startups.
No, I 100% agree with you. I actually couldn't agree with you more on that. Like, I even try to live my life on that kind of like, just it's either black or white to me, right? Like, and don't give me the gray. I don't care about that because it doesn't it doesn't really answer the question, right? So I think that's really good advice. But I'm kind of curious then, just kind of as we're talking about this, how do you guys kind of handle support? Because that can be super tricky, right? Like, do you guys have a dedicated team for that? Do you, as kind of the CEO, ever handle support? Like, I know Mike from FreshBooks is kind of, I saw him talk. He did a whole day presentation about kind of a startup thing a number of years ago, and him and kind of his C-level suite take like a day out of a month to just like sit in the help desk and take field kind of support calls and whatnot. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I get the premise of it where, like it's nice to talk to CEO every once in a while, and you can never get better feedback from them, kind of your customers, whether it's good or bad feedback. But I'm kind of curious to know, like, how do you guys handle support? Because it's tricky, right? Or it can be tricky.
Right. We have or two kind of categories of support. The one is pretty common for most people, which is classic, client support. And within that client support, we have a DIY model that has really dedicated people that has a little pop-up, how can I help you? And you can ask an expert kind of thing for DIY. So, we offer location-based research the same way you would with SurveyMonkey. You can just log in and go do that. Well, then we have account managers that, hey, Kevin, if you're a good account of mine, you're going to call Rick because you've got a dedicated account manager and you're going to spend time. And so forget your salesperson, forget me, the CEO. You're going to talk to Sally or Sue or Bill or Bob because they are your account manager. Now that's for the business side over there. Now on the other side, we have agents. We have everyday people that have problems like, listen, I thought I did the job right. Man, you're not paying me. And hey, I thought this is the way I was supposed to do this and something doesn't look right. And so we have about 25 part-time and 4 full-time people, and all they do is sit on Zendesk and engage agents 24/7. It's all time because we have to. Because again, we're getting data in near real time. We have to go do that. Now, for me, the last thing they want is for me to sit on that because, like, oh no, Rick, you're going to say yes to everything. So I'm like a nightmare walking in. But every now and then, to his point, I don't have a formal way to do that, but every now and then we'll get a big surge. It's a crazy weekend. It's a Black Friday weekend, or it's a big Super Bowl weekend. And so I'll go down and answer some support, and I spend more time saying, now, how do I do this? And how are things changed? But it is kind of fun to engage in that. But if you think about support for us, we feel that knowing the person on the other side makes sense. And on the agent side, to get quick response is really, really important. So in one avenue, we have speed. And the other avenue, we have some quickness in it, but it's really more about being more dedicated and having more of a consistent person. And that's how we handle feedback back and forth.
No, I think that's interesting. The other thing that kind of spins off from that is some of your agents, probably most of your agents are kind of they're potentially the general public, right? For lack of a better term for it. And obviously their technical ability could range from, I have had every Android and iPhone and iPad and every tech gadget for the last 20 years, or this is my first smartphone and I want to make some extra side money, right? Like, and everywhere in between. So how do you kind of handle just like that kind of technology gap, right, between your agents?
Well, so what happens with this is we feel like we do a really good job of simplifying things from a task standpoint. And so day one was more difficult for us because everyone had a new phone. They're trying to figure things out. They're overwhelmed with technology. But from today's perspective, people pretty much get the phone. They get the technology in front of them. So for us, it's being more methodical in what we do. And we break things into very bite-sized pieces for people to be able to consume because we don't want to overwhelm folks. And that's part of the secret sauce that we do. And we've been doing this now for 7+ years. And I would argue that my team is the best in the business in articulating needs, laying out very specific operational processes, creating
Sure.
great methodology. And so it really does oversimplify things to the fact that we can take a very complex request and we don't have to train 10,000 people. We can simply put the request out and we get great data back in.
Interesting. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, like, to your point, majority of people, if not everybody, kind of have a smartphone in North America and a lot of other parts of the world, right? So, and most of them have taken a photo before, or if you're on iOS, kind of use FaceTime. I still think, like, I prefer Android over iOS, and people might shoot me for that, but I think, like, like, just kind of people know their platform, right? And I still think, like,
they really do. But even if you think about the platform, someone said, well, gosh, how do I do this on an Android? How do I do this on iPhone? The people in our support group, we have people that have, iPhones and Androids. And so they're somewhat experts too. There's like, oh, dude, just pull up your phone, and they'll have their phone and they'll talk you through it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. No, that's actually really good and there's like a trillion Android type phones. So I totally get that.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I feel for the people that have to support Android phones, because it's like, well, which phone is it? Which weird interface do you have by some weird vendor?
Our developers go crazy. That's why it's something.
No, I totally get that. So, but sadly, Rick, we're coming to the end of the show. I wish we had more time, and I would love to have you again on the show to just kind of continue the conversation, because I think we could probably talk for another handful of episodes really about kind of this stuff. But I think we should wrap up the show with mentioning where people could get more information about yourself, Field Agent, and Jitco online.
Sure. For a field agent, it's pretty straightforward. It's fieldagent.net, and that's all one word. Log in there. You can sign up to be a DIY person, can gather more information. And if you're an agent, you can find us in iTunes if you want to actually make some money, so we can actually pay you some cash to collect data for us. Just go to iTunes and put in Field Agent. We're the orange background with a white tie. You can't miss us. And for those that want to impress someone when they walk into a meeting, or they want to be the expert in the room, go to GoJicco, GoJicco.com. Put in a question. We'll give you one for free. Play around with it and be the smart guy in the room. So that's the easiest way for people to find out about us. And of course, Kevin, they can check out, information on your site as well about previous podcasts as well.
Perfect. Rick, well, again, I really appreciate you taking the time of your day to be on the show, and we'll keep in touch like we always have, and hopefully you do another one of these again soon.
Listen, I look forward to it, Kevin. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, man. Later.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.